Okay. Kibzat Hashem will start. Leil Mashmat Yosef ben Osnat. The Gemara says, Ita b'Gemara de Ta'anit, Rabbi Eliezer ben Padat. There was a certain rabbi, his name was Rabbi Eliezer ben Padat. He was very poor. He had a very hard time financially. He went to get his blood taken out. Went to get a bloodletting. Back in the day, during the time of the Gemara, it was commonly accepted that when people let blood, it's healthy. People would let blood, they would take out blood. I pressed record, right? When people would let out blood, so the person's body would have new blood come into the system, create new blood into the system. So every so often they would let blood. So this rabbi went to let blood, and he came home and he was looking for something to eat. But he was very poor. He didn't have anything. We're talking about somebody that's a giant. Somebody bigger than anybody that we could have ever imagined. He couldn't find anything to eat in his house. What did he find? He found a little piece of garlic. He ate the garlic. He started to feel a little bit weak. And he passed out. And he passed out. Suddenly the Chachamim, they came to visit him, they see him laying. He was crying, and then he was laughing. And then they saw fire coming out of his forehead. And they were thinking, what's happening? When he woke up, they asked him, Rabbeinu, what was happening here with the whole scene? Crying, laughing, fire coming from your forehead. He said, what happened is, I saw the Shekhinah came to talk to him. I'm not talking about somebody nowadays where he tells you see the Shekhinah. He really saw the Shekhinah really came to speak to him, right? And told him, Shalom, and he said, Ribono Shel Olam Hashem, he asked him, how long am I going to suffer like this? He doesn't have anything. Imagine the guy comes home, he only has a piece of garlic to eat. No bread, nothing else. A piece of garlic. He told him, how much am I going to suffer financially like this? Hashem told him, Eliezer Beni, if you want, I'll put you to death. I'll make it that you pass away. I'll re-bring your neshama back into this world. And maybe you'll be born at a time when there's MaZal for Parnasah. This is what Hashem answers him. So, he tells him, Hashem, did I live most of my life, or I still have most of my life to live? Hashem told him, you already lived most of your life. He told him, if I already lived most of my life, I don't want to come back. I'll just finish it off like this. As much as we make it, and whatever happens. And then afterwards, Hashem took him and he showed him his Gan Eden. And he saw his Gan Eden, and he saw what he's going to have in Olam Haba. And that was the flame that was coming out from his forehead, because the Malach hit him, I think, when he woke up, and that was the flame that came out of his forehead. From this Gemara, the Zohar says, Three things depend on a person's MaZal, not on a person's Zuchuyot. What? A person having children depends on a person's MaZal, not whether a person is righteous or wicked. A person's Parnasah depends on a person's MaZal. And a person's life depends on a person's MaZal, not on a person's Zuchuyot.
Where does MaZal come from?
When a person is born, his MaZal is decided amongst many factors. His family, the neighborhood, his parents, what his purpose in life is going to be, his neshama, where it came from. At that moment when his neshama is created, right? Every neshama comes from different places, has different tikkunim, has different tafkidim. Every neshama has different things that it needs to do. Whatever purpose that neshama has, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives it everything that it needs.
Why pray for Parnasah?
Oh, that's a very good question, right? So it says, if a person is born that his MaZal is going to be poor, right? This is the way he's going to be, right? The Zohar says, until he dies. If his MaZal is to be poor, he's going to be poor. Some people, their MaZal is to be poor some part of their life and to be rich some part of their life. Everybody has different mazal. Sometimes the Kadosh Baruch Hu says this person's mazal neshama to be poor for 30 years and then to be wealthy, or vice versa, right? And he says that the only way for a person's mazal to change, if Hashem, he'll pass away and Hashem will put him in a different body and maybe his mazal will be different, and not even for sure. And you find out, you see this in the story. So he says, what's the point of davening? The truth is, the Ramchal says a very big chidush. And before I get to the Ramchal's chidush, also, we said before that if a person has a lot of zuchuyot and a lot of maasim tovim and he's a lot of tefillah, it can change a person's mazal. It could change a person's mazal, but it depends when. There's two different mazalot we mentioned. This is the Chiddush of the Ramchal. He says every person is born, he has a tikkun that he needs to make in the world, and he has a tikkun that he has to make in his own neshama. He says, so he has two different mazalot. The one mazal is the tikkun that he has to make in the world. His mazal is already established that this is what he has to go through no matter what he does. Everybody has to go through different things in life no matter what they do, that this is what they have to go through in order to be able to make that tikkun that they need, which is that fixture that they need to make in the world, spiritually. So that it can never change. But a person's own private personal mazal, that his own personal tikkun for his own neshama, right? If he has a certain mazal that it's affecting him, for example, if a person needs to be wealthy in order to be able to fulfill his purpose in life, or a person needs to be poor in order to fulfill his purpose in life, a person could pray, and that mazal he could change. That mazal he could change. Only if it doesn't contradict his tikkun in the world. But if his tikkun in the world is for him to be poor, then it will never change.
But if you change name, you can change mazal too?
No, not necessarily. Some
people change names, they say, I have to change my life, I change my mazal.
Not necessarily. Sometimes, yes. Only when a person is very sick or very, his life is under the ground, we'll call it. Right? So they'll add a name. They'll add a name maybe to bring more chef or to bring more something tov for a person. But it's not so easy. It doesn't always work.
How about they say the woman, your woman, your wife?
Yeah.
She's your partner.
So the Gemara says, right, a person wants to be rich, a person should respect his wife. Right? It says the person gives kavod to his wife, the Gemara says to become wealthy. The Gemara also says the rich people of Bavel, how are they zocheh to be rich? The Gemara says because they had a lot of kavod for Shabbat. Mechabed Shabbat tremendously. Now, a person, ashir, rich, doesn't necessarily mean that finances, it could be in every way, right? The Gemara says, Ezu ashir, asamech bichlako, Ezu ashir, kol shesh lo, bet kisei samuch libitato, Ezu ashir, right? The Gemara says so many definitions of what an ashir is, right? Some say that ashir is a person that has a wife that's na'ebe ma'aseh. So, what do Chachamim mean that a person's going to be an usher when he respects his wife, or a person's going to be an usher, whatever? There's different pirush from ashir. Some people, they can have a lot of money, but they can be very poor. Why? Mentally. A person could be mentally poor, a person could be mentally miserable. And a person can have whatever he needs, but he could be tremendously happy. He could feel like the richest man in the world. He enjoys everything that he has. Right? So ashiris, what's ashiris? Right? A person could be wealthy, but at the same time, he can't enjoy anything. His life is always so stressful, he can't even enjoy. He could sit inside his fancy car and not even realize the car that he's driving in because his mind is all over the place, right? A person can walk into his fancy house and all it takes is one kid to take his money and make his life miserable. He can't even enjoy the $5 million house that he paid for, that he could take a few more steps between his bedroom and his living room. So what, that's considered rich? That's not rich, it's poorer than everybody. You're going to have a guy who lives in a small apartment, has a fantastic wife and great kids, and life is good, and he has what he needs, and he's happy from morning to night. So who's richer? So ashiris is not always defined by money. Ashiris is not always defined by money. Ashiris and bracha is a all-around picture of a person's quality of life. That's real ashirut. But he told him over here, you see from here that a person is born with a certain mazal. Person is born with a certain mazal, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides what's good for this neshama. When a person is born, Hashem decides if he's going to be healthy or not, if he's going to be smart or not, if he's going to be wealthy or not. HaKadosh Baruch Hu already decides for this neshama what his purpose is going to be, what's good for him. So it says over here, you see from this Zohar, from this story in the Gemara, that a person should not be upset in the situation that he is in life, and he should trust in Hashem, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu already decided everything that he should have. And if a person was not zocheh to have wealth in Olam Hazeh, he should be calm, that he should know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give him 3 times in Olam Haba. The Ramchal says in Mesiyat Yesharim, many people that have a mentality, just on this topic, many people have a mentality, they think to themselves, I'll do the basic minimum in spirituality. Once I know that I'm in Gan Eden, that's it. I daven, I learn a little bit, I keep kosher, Shabbat. The basic minimum I have, I'm in, I said I'm going to Gan Eden, we're good. And the rest I'll enjoy in Olam Hazeh. The Ramchal says, the more a person works in Olam Hazeh, the more a person perfects himself in Olam Hazeh, the more he's going to have Olam Haba. He says, imagine if a person in this world is poor. Well, how long is the person poor for? 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, right? He could live in a little shtetl, he could be a beggar, he doesn't have anything. But he knows eventually it's going to be over. He knows eventually it's going to be over, right? Even if a person is suffering from poverty. But what? He says in Olam Haba, if a person is poor in Olam Haba, he's stuck like this forever. Imagine a person gets Olam Haba and he's poor. He has very little Olam Haba, and everybody around him has Ilat Ilot. And he knows he's going to be like this for eternity. There's nothing to change. And therefore, MaZal, the Ramchal says, if a person in this world has a hard time accepting to be poor, and he's only going to be like that for a certain amount of time, imagine if a person is poor in Olam Haba, which is forever. And therefore, a person shouldn't take it so lightly that the suffering that a person receives in this world gives a person much more Olam Haba, because the Olam Haba is very chashuv. Right now, we don't see it. But after 120, when we get there, we're going to realize, and we're going to appreciate, we're going to look back and we're going to say, wow, Baruch Hashem that happened to me, Baruch Hashem that happened to me, Baruch Hashem that happened to me. A person doesn't see what's happening to him in life, but a person has to understand that whatever Hashem dictated for this person to happen in life is exactly what this person's neshama needs in order to make its tikkun. And therefore, mainly it says, anybody that has Yirat Shamayim should be happy with what Hashem gave him, whether it's a little, whether it's a lot. Even the more so, a person shouldn't go and try to be upset or angry at Hashem, because the person has to understand that everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave a person or did for a person is exactly what he needs. And he says, Kol hadochak, any poverty that a person has is a tikkun for a person's neshama to be able to purify it for the sins that it has, whether in this Gilgul, whether in a past Gilgul. And he says, Shahadochek lo, ki zeh chesed shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that this is a chesed for Hashem, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu pays the person back for his avirot in this world. He says, because there are many Rishaim, he says, that are screaming in Gehinnom and saying, Halavai, that Hashem should have punished us on Olam Hazeh, in this world, right? That they should have been poor and had a difficult life, and they would have suffered here instead of suffering over there. Because all these people that might have it, from we see, they look like they're having it good and they're sinners against Hashem. Their sins are piling up and piling up and piling up and piling up, and after 120, when they're burning in hell and when they're suffering through because they need to purify their souls for what they did to their neshama, they're screaming and crying and Gehinnom, wishing that they would have rather been poor in this world than had what they had and did everything that they did.
Is it for a certain period of time, like 11 months?
If a person's lucky, he'll go to hell, and the max Gehinnom is 12 months. But sometimes to get to hell could take up to 1,000 years. Yeah, a person can come back in a Gilgul, for example. A person can come back in a reincarnation as a rock. Or a person can come back in a reincarnation as a dog. Or a person can come back into reincarnation as anything. Right? Rav Yehuda Fataya brings, Rav Yehuda Fataya was a very big Mikubal. Rav Avadja says personal stories about him. He's very, very big. He used to speak to spirits. He lived 70, 80 years ago. Spirits used to come into people and he used to speak to them. And he wrote a sefer and all the conversations that he had with all the spirits. And he writes over there that there was this one lady. He writes several stories over there, but he writes of this one lady that he had a very hard time with. This lady came into somebody's body, and she was causing this person to be sick all the time. And Rav Yehuda Fataya was trying to use different names of Hashem, Api Kabbalah, to take this spirit out, to take them to Gehinnom. And this lady said that her punishment was for 100 years. Every single day she had to go to a forest full of wild animals, collect wood, make a fire, burn it, and throw herself inside and burn her whole body to death. And the next day she had to do the thing over and over. That was after 100 years only she can only get Gehinam. Why? Why was that punishment? Because she cheated on her husband. So for every single time that she cheated on her husband, they gave her another year of taking wood, putting it on, burning herself alive every single day. And only after 100 years they'll bring her back to Beis Din to see whether or not she go to Gehinam or not.
It's going to be the old woman like this, who is cheating husband.
I don't know, right? But that was her punishment, right? Men come back in a Gilgal as a dog.
This lady was religious.
I don't know, right? So like this. So what happened? My point being is that a person thinks it's not only hell after 120 years. A person can go through a lot more even before he gets to hell, right? A person thinks to himself, okay, after 120 he'll come back in a Gilgal as a bird or as a dog. Who cares? But the truth is it's not true. Why? Because if a person, imagine a person now, imagine taking a human being, taking him and putting him inside a dog. And he's stuck inside the dog and he sees everything, he hears everything, but he can't do anything. And the dog is running around, jumping, and the person is just stuck there like this. 10 years of the dog's life, he can't move. That's exactly what it is. It's not like a person doesn't feel it or doesn't know. If there's a Gilgul in there, he sees everything, he feels everything. The same person, a person was here, is the same person is going to be in that Gilgul with his same feelings and emotions and tavot and everything, and he's stuck there for 10 years and he can't get out.
Are all animals...
I don't know. Right? Person speaks Lashon Hara, comes back and there's a stone. Imagine a person, there could be a spirit inside of a stone, could be a soul inside of a stone, stuck like this. For 50, 60 years, he could be just stuck like this, he can't do anything. And every day he just wants to leave and he can't. Right? So there's no, Gehinam, you're right, by the time you get to Gehinam, to go to Gehinam is a privilege. So a person shouldn't just think that, but all these things are not just a form of punishment. These things are ways for a person to metaken his neshama. These things are ways to purify a person's soul. And therefore, mainly he says a person should always understand that everything that Hashem does for a person is exactly what a person needs for his neshama in order to fix his neshama. And therefore he says a person should know not every time in life is the same. Sometimes a person's life is up, sometimes a person's life is down. But a person should what? He should always say, Kol man de'aved achona letav avid. Everything that Hashem does at the end of the day is good. And then he ends off with a fantastic chiddush. I'm going to say this chiddush and then we'll get into halakha. Right? He says over here that any single person that has Yirat Shamayim should know one thing. That if HaKadosh Baruch Hu put a mitzvah in front of you, it's a siman that in Shamayim there's a bad decree on a person, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu put this mitzvah in front of him, so he could do this mitzvah, and Hashem is trying to save him from the bad decree by putting this mitzvah in front of him. Verstehst? Therefore, mainly if a person is put in a situation where there's a mitzvah in front of him, and he could do it right now, right? He should know that right now in Shamayim Hashem is sending this mitzvah because Hashem wants to save him from something that's supposed to happen to him. And this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu putting him in a situation to do in order to save him. And therefore, Mele nitzol me'atzara shenigzar alav. And therefore, Mele, a person should be careful. When it comes to a mitzvah, atach mitzena, a person shouldn't let the mitzvah just sit there, right? A person should jump on the mitzvah and do it as soon as possible. Why? Because this is the mitzvah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent him that he needs in order to save his own soul from whatever it needs to be saved from. Anything. Right? And your mother calls you, come and help me. I need help with A, B, and C. Your wife calls you, come and help me, I need help with A, B, and C. Your neighbor calls you, your cousin calls you, somebody needs some help from you. The rabbi comes and calls you, say, come tonight, shir tonight, you're sitting in catch, not doing anything. Why is the rabbi calling you so much? Hashem sent him to call you to tell you, come learn. Hashem is telling you there's a gezeran. Right now Hashem is giving you a mitzvah, because Hashem is trying to save you. Anytime a person is mitzvah faced in front of him, he should know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put that mitzvah in front of him in order to save him from a gezeran min hashamayim. Right, that's what he says, very big chidush. For example, right? Some guy comes, knocks on your door for tzedakah, right? Knocking on your door. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent him there because right now Hashem wants you to give tzedakah. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu has this cheshbonot. Why right now Hashem gave you this opportunity to go ahead and give this person. Yeah, you know that joke they say about, I don't know if it's a joke, but it's for sure a reality in a way. Because some people are so cheap, they don't like to donate. So what do they do? Say they work, say they live in Long Island and they work in New Jersey. Right? So whenever he's in New Jersey, right, somebody comes to him and says, give a donation. Says, no, I already donate more than enough where I live in Long Island. When he's in Long Island, right, they go to him and say, come give a donation. No, everybody bothers me in Jersey. I donate more than enough already in New Jersey. You know, both places he says, I support over there. Right, Lamah say it doesn't do anything. Right, let's go on. We're going to do Ilchot Yom Tov. I figured I don't want to do Ilchot Pesach because the rabbi is going to give a Shabbat HaGadol. He already gave the Shabbat HaGadol Josh on Pesach, so I'm sure you guys probably know Ilchot Pesach better than I do. So I figured maybe we'll do a little bit on Ilchot Yom Tov. A lot of people sometimes, they get confused between Yom Tov and Shabbat. They think to themselves, Yom Tov, it's mutter to cook, it's mutter to carry, this is mutter, that's mutter. And sometimes they get carried away, they think other things are also mutar. The Shulchan Aruch says, Kol melacha asura b'Shabbat asura b'Yom Tov. Every single melacha, every single Isser that applies to Shabbat applies to Yom Tov. Every single one. Chutz me'melechet ochel nefesh, except food. Right? Except anything pertaining to food. But we'll see, it's not everything pertaining to food. Certain things are still remain to be also even when it comes to food. Right? V'chutz me'otza'at, also carrying. Carrying is also mutar on Yom Tov. In a place where even when there is no ear of it's mutar to carry. Why? Because before, in order to be able to have food, a lot of people had their cooking stations outside. People need to carry pots and pans and foods from one place to the next. People would eat outside and inside. So, not like today, we have ovens inside, everything's inside. Before, they used to cook with charcoal and ovens and everything else is outside. Imagine having a grilling inside of your house. Right? So therefore, Hotzah was mutar. Havara as well. Havara is making a flame. Making a flame also is mutar on Yom Tov. Now, when you make a flame, you can't make a new flame. You have to make flame to flame. Right? So, why flame to flame? Really, making a flame is mutar. So making flame to flame, because to make a new flame is an Isser D'Rabbanan. Right? It's really mutar to make a new flame. Chachamim asked it, right? Chachamim asked it because they said it's like you're creating something new. They didn't allow people to create something new on Yom Tov. It's like creating something new. Therefore, Chachamim came along and said to make a new fire's house, you have to take fire to fire. Right? That's according to the way Kimat all the Rishonim learn. The Rambam learns that making a flame is not usher because of creating something new. The Rambam learns it as anything that you could have done Erev Yom Tov, you're not allowed to do on Yom Tov. Therefore, since you could have prepared the flame Erev Yom Tov, you're not allowed to prepare the flame on Yom Tov. Right? And you're going to ask me, what's the difference between both their opinions? There's a very big difference in halakha, but hopefully we'll get to it later on. I don't want to get into it now. Right? So, that's what the Shulchan Aruch says. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. And then the Ramah comes along and he says, any foods that you could cook from before Yom Tov that are going to taste the same exact way if you cook it before Yom Tov as if you would cook it on Yom Tov, you're not allowed to cook it on Yom Tov. Meaning to say like this. Say right now I want to come cook something on Yom Tov. If I cook this before Yom Tov and I warm it up on Yom Tov, it's going to taste exactly the same. According to the Ramah, according to the Ashkenazim, they're not allowed to make it on Yom Tov. According to the Sephardim, we are allowed. Why? Besides the fact that no Sephardic food tastes the same when you warm it up, by us everything you have to make fresh, otherwise it just doesn't taste the same. Right? So therefore, Mela, by us we cook everything fresh on that day. But the reason why the Ramah was machmir that you should make everything before if it doesn't ruin the taste, why? Because he said that he didn't want people to be so involved on the Chag cooking. Right? He wanted everybody to cook from before the Chag. So on the Chag you just warm up the food, and if it tastes exactly the same, why should you be busy the whole Chag making food? Sit and enjoy the Chag, learn, sit, spend time with your family. What are you going to start being involved in cooking now all the time? Therefore, Mela, the Ramah didn't want people to be involved in cooking so much in Yom Tov, so he said anything that you could cook and will taste the same, you do it from before Yom Tov. Now, also, kneading bread is mutar, baking bread is mutar, right? Cooking is mutar, shchita is mutar also, right? Shchita, because it's a part of ochel nefesh, it's a part of food. Yom Tov.
Only Yom Tov.
Chol HaMoed also, right? So a person right now wants to have fresh beef on Yom Tov. A person allowed to shecht an animal is allowed to do the whole. Now we don't do it because, first of all, it's too much work and there's a lot of times where the animal might not be kosher. So Rav Ovadia says it's too complicated. The minhag is that we don't shecht animals. But lafi halacha, you're allowed to kill an animal in order to be able to eat it on Yom Tov. You're allowed to. Now, next halacha, the Shulchan Aruch writes, Ketziran, harvesting you're not allowed, right? For example, a person wants to go outside and he wants to see his apples or tomatoes growing in his backyard. He's not allowed to go and pluck them out. Why not? We just said anything to do with food is mutar, right? The Shulchan Aruch says it's asur. The Rabbanan it's asur. We'll see why.
What if you don't have no vegetables to cook?
Still not allowed. Go borrow from your neighbor. You could go to the store. You could take on credit. Also not allowed. Not allowed. They need to prepare from before. Once a chamim master, it needs already asur, even if it fell off on Yom Tov. Right? But you're allowed to go to the store. You could take on credit, but you can't tell the price. For example, say if a person now, Yom Tov, you don't need an Erev. Say right now, you forgot, you didn't have tomatoes in your house. right? So you don't have, but you know the grocery store over there, he knows who you are. So you could go to the grocery store, you can't mention prices, you can't talk about money. Tell him, listen, Tzaddik, I want to take a bag of tomatoes, or 2 packs of tomatoes. I don't want to know how much it costs, I'll take it, we'll talk about the money after Yom Tov. You take it and you go. You can take it on credit. No, you can't buy them. You can't be Messiah Biad over Avera. You can't support somebody doing Avera.
He needs to wait before he leaves.
No, he can wait, write it down for himself, just not tell you anything.
So you can't talk to him in money. If you want, you could tell him here, this I took a bag. If you want, you could do whatever you want. But you can't discuss with him money, and you can't discuss with him weight. If he wants to do it for himself, he could do it for himself. If he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to. You could take a pack. Tell him, look, there's 10 tomatoes in here. You can leave whatever it is. Shabbat, you can do the same thing. But Shabbat, you need an Erev to carry it. I don't know how to debate. Here, it's Yom Tov, it's easy, you don't need an Erev. But Shabbat, you can do the same thing. If you don't, for example, say if a person's child is not feeling good, doesn't have baby Motrin or baby Tylenol, go to the pharmacy, say, look, I can't talk to you about the price, don't take this right now. I'll come, we'll talk about the money after Yom Tov. Come take it and leave. If he gives it to you, you can take it. Anything that you need, yeah.
Even leaker.
If he knows you, yeah, but you can't talk about the price. You gotta be careful. Leaker, you can't discuss pricing and money and this. You tell him, we'll take it, we'll talk about everything else. Motzei Shabbat or Motzei Yom Tov is mutar. Everything that you need, yeah. You're allowed to take. Anything that you need for Shabbat, l'tzorech mitzvah, you're allowed to take. You can't take something now for Motzei Shabbat. Whatever you need that Shabbat, you're allowed to take. Right? Techina, grinding stuff. You're not allowed to grind stuff on Yom Tov. We'll see what this means, grinding stuff, right? Or you're not allowed to harvest grapes on Yom Tov. Or you're not allowed to do sichitan. I can't take grapes and squeeze it and make myself grape juice on Yom Tov. I'm not allowed to take fruit and squeeze and make myself juice on Yom Tov. This is the Pashas Divrei Shulchan Aruch. We have to see why. And we'll see in length that by Schita, some places were a little bit more makel. If you're doing a little bit just for that day, we'll see. Tzedam, you're not allowed to trap, for example. If a person, say, went to upstate, and in his backyard he has a whole big river over there, and you see the fish jumping. He said, let me go trap myself some fresh fish for Yom Tov. Rafi Alacha, the Oraita, you're allowed to, the Rabbanan say it's Asur. The Rabbanan, you're not allowed. You're not allowed to trap fish on Yom Tov. Why? Even though all this has to do with food, right? The Shulchan Aruch says that the Chachamim asur it. He says over here, the reason why the Chachamim asur it is because certain melachot, certain actions, even though they're related to food, the way of doing these actions is when you do them, you do a lot at once. So anything that you do a lot at once, Chachamim asur it. For example, when people go and they harvest they harvest their wheat, or they rip off grapes, or they rip off tomatoes, right? People usually take a lot at once. They come out, they see a lot, you just take everything at once. So anything that people do a lot at once, Chachamim came along and they made it asur, right? This is just 2 introductions to Hilchot Yom Tov. Now I just want to go through very quickly different teshuvot of the Or L'Tzion. We're just going to use this as like the foundation of the topics, just to ask the questions, and then we'll build on that. So the first question the Or L'Tzion asks is, when should we light the candles on Erev Yom Tov? When should we light the candles on Erev Yom Tov? He says, L'chatchila, we should light the candles before Shkiyah, but even if the lady didn't light the candles before Shkiyah, she's allowed to light the candles after Shkiyah, because you're allowed to light on Yom Tov. Therefore, Mela, a lady is allowed to light candles on Yom Tov, but the Chatchila, even though she's allowed to light candles on Yom Tov, she should still light it before Yom Tov. Right? So a woman will say, look, why do I have to light it now? Later, when my husband comes from Shul, I'll light the candles. Light it from before Yom Tov, right? But also, even if she lights it before Yom Tov, on Shabbat, a lot of people have a minhag. What do they do? What do the women do? They light the candles, they cover the eyes, and then they say the bracha. Right? That's how the Bukharians do it. They light the candles, they cover the eyes, and then they say bracha. That's like the Ben Ish Chai, Pi Kabbalah, that's like the Raman. Those poskim. Rav Avadia, he went to the opposite extreme. He said, no, absolutely not. You have to first say bracha, and then you light the candles. Right? So, however the minhag is, you stick to the minhag. But on Yom Tov, everybody agrees that you say bracha, and then you light the candles. Even though on Shabbat we light the candles and then we say bracha, the reason why we light the candles and then we say the bracha on Shabbat is because we're concerned also that once you say the bracha, it could be you accepted Shabbat, and now if you're going to light candles, it could be that you're breaking Shabbat. Therefore, we light the candles first and then we say the bracha. But on Yom Tov, there's no concern because I'm allowed to light the candles. So even if I accepted Yom Tov with the bracha, there's no problem of lighting the candles. Right? So therefore, there, we would want to light the candles in accordance to all the opinions, and therefore you would say the bracha and then light the candles. Another thing we have to know, I have 2 different types of candles that people could light. Maybe there's more. One is you have the wick with the olive oil, which is good to light with olive oil. It's a mitzvah and a mufchar. To light candles with olive oil is number one. It says the person that's careful to have beautiful candles, beautiful nerot, for Shabbat, Yom Tov, and everything else, even to go and to pay for an electricity bill in the shul. All these things are very big segulat to have children that are going to be Talmidei Chachamim. Right, to be very careful with lights pertaining to mitzvot. Now, olive oil, also you have to make sure if you want to light with olive oil, the mitzvah and mukhar is to use real olive oil, the ones that people eat. Not the ones that they sell to light the candles. I don't understand how that's olive oil. It looks like it's a chemical. You can't eat it. How is this olive oil? Right? So therefore, you should use real olive oil. Now, how do you do it? You take a wick. You take the wicks and you put it together. All the wicks that you need to put together, make sure that you put them together before Yom Tov. Because it could be an ister of making a keli. Because it's unusable. When you're putting it together, now you're making it into a keli. There, it could be a tikkun mana. It could be a pram, a pialacha. Therefore, you should prepare all the wicks that you need for Yom Tov before Yom Tov. And the...
But the wicks... They're already. I thought you're allowed to do it on Yom Tov.
No, you should pre-make them.
Candles you prepare before Shabbat.
Even on Yom Tov, you should prepare before Yom Tov, because the tikkun mana.
The same. The candles are going to be used for Shabbat. You cannot prepare them until after.
No, there's certain wicks with the olive oil.
No, the wicks I just put it into the little holder.
Oh, so that's different. Everyone is different. If you just have the wicks that you put into a holder, right, and then you have the same holders, you just take out the wicks and you put in the same holders, because that's not a tikkun mana, right? That you're just inserting it. But here, there are certain wicks that don't have holders. There's certain wicks that come into two, and you need to make it, and then you put it inside. Also, some people use regular candles. So those who use the regular candles, you have a shayla of mimareach. Meaning to say, when you want to light the candles on Yom Tov, how do they put the candles inside? A lot of times they melt the bottom, and then they stick it on. That's a problem of mimareach. You can't do that on Yom Tov. Right? You can't melt the bottom and then stick it on. And therefore you have to try to avoid that. Try to do it in a way, try to get like a tighter holder when you put it in, that it stays very good.
How many brachot are going to be this week for the light?
If you say Shechianu, you mean?
Shechianu.
And Alik Ner Yom Tov and Shabbat.
3, right?
No, it's really one. I think by Shabbat and Yom Tov, I think you say it together. Alik Ner Shabbat v'Shal Yom Tov. Yeah, I think the Shabbat and Yom Tov you say together. I don't think it's different to brachot.
Shechianu second.
And Shechianu. So Shechianu we're going to discuss. Rav Avadia says a woman should not say Shechianu on candles. Why? Because they're going to hear Shechianu on Kiddush. So if they're going to say Shechianu on candles and they're going to say Shechianu on Kiddush later on, and they're going to hear Shechianu on Kiddush later on, it could be a hefsek. We need to say like this. Right? Rav Avadia says that really Shechianu you don't have to say on candles, you don't have to say on Kiddush. Shechianu you're saying because of the Yom Tov. Right? I could say Shechianu while I'm walking outside. Yeah, I forgot to say Shechianu. Shechianu l'zman hazeh Yom Tov, right? So Shechianu is okay. But they instituted in the mitzvot. So Rabbi Tzion Abishul says if a lady says Shechianu on candles, she has what to rely on. But Rav Avadia says no, don't say Shechianu on the candles. Why? Because she's going to hear Shechianu in the Kiddush. She's going to say Ala Gefen, right? She's going to say Borei Priya Gefen, and then he's going to say Shechianu, the husband. She already heard Shechianu. That means she doesn't need to hear Shechianu. She's entering a main on the Shechianu, which for her is a hefsek. It's like cutting off between the bracha. Then how is she going to be yotze? How is she going to drink afterwards? She's making a hefsek in between the Kiddush, Rav Avadia says. Therefore, Rav Avadia says that she shouldn't say Shechianu. On the candles, she should only hear Shechianu in the Kiddush. However, many women say Shechianu on the candles. If a woman wants to say Shechianu on candles, she could continue saying Shechianu on the candles. Right? She could continue saying Shechianu on the candles. Now, let's see what else he says over here. If a person, right, let's get to different shalot which are more pertaining to us. More pertaining to us. Now the question comes up, if you're allowed to cook a lot on Yom Tov, even though you don't really need a lot. For example, now it's say for example it's Yom Tov, say 2 days of Yom Tov. I'm cooking on the first day of Yom Tov in the morning. I need to make, say I'm making korochan. You have 5 people in your house. You want to make korochan for 20 people. Why? Because you want to save it for the next day also. Are you allowed to or no? So really you're not allowed to cook from one day of Yom Tov to the next day. Even for one day Yom Tov Shabbat or one day Yom Tov to the next day which is not Yom Tov, you're not allowed to cook. However, if you're cooking for Yom Tov in the morning before your first meal and you're cooking for lunchtime, then you're allowed to cook a lot, even though you know that you're going to leave it over for the next day. Because since you're preparing it for this Uda and you're going to eat some of it, and then you're leaving it over for the next day, the Chachamim allowed you to cook like that, even though you're cooking a lot. right? But that's only if you're cooking a lot, say in one oven or in one pot, and so on and so forth. But if a person is cooking fried fish, for example, every fish is frying separately. You know how many fish you need. You don't have to count, but you know how many fish you need. You already say, okay, this is more than enough for lunch, and then you continue frying for the next day. That you're not allowed to do, right? Because you're cooking everything separately. But if a person's making a pot of food, a person's making, say, a pot of plov, he has 5 people over there. He only needs a certain amount, but he cooks for 20 people because he knows he's going to have a lot of people at nighttime. So if you're cooking before lunchtime, before the first meal, you're allowed to. Once you finish your first meal, lunchtime, and now you say, oh, I have people going to come tonight, I'm going to cook now, I'm going to eat a little bit, and that's it, I'll save the rest for later. That you're not allowed. That's haramah. It's asur to do, it's an issa d'Rabbanan. You're not allowed to cook now, already after you ate, knowing that you're just going to eat a little bit and leave it over. But before your morning, before your lunchtime, so you're cooking for the lunch suda, you're really going to eat a lot of it. Then the Chamim allowed you to cook a lot, even though you know that you're going to save it over for the next day. We'll do one more halakha. This halakha is very applicable. We're gonna have to explain how to work around it. Right? It says, are you allowed to invite people that are mechalale Shabbat for your house for Yom Tov? Right? This is common in certain places. I know I one time went to somebody's house, first day of Yom Tov, and they were making a barbecue, and they were gonna have people that night come to them for Yom Tov, right? That were not Shomrei Shabbat, and they wanted to make another barbecue for them when they were gonna come. They have a serious problem, right? It's asur for a person to cook on Yom Tov for a goy. A goy comes to your house, you can't make him a cup of coffee, you can't cook for him, right? This is why it's asur to invite goyim to your house on Yom Tov. If a person's mechalel Shabbat, if a person breaks Shabbat publicly, goes, drives around in front of everybody, smokes in front of everybody, doesn't care, lefi halacha has a din of a goy. So if such a person comes to your house, you're allowed to cook for him on Yom Tov. You're allowed to cook for him on Yom Tov. However, if he's somebody that's embarrassed to break Shabbat in front of a rabbi, he's not considered mechalel Shabbat for Hesya. For example, we used to have somebody that in Brooklyn, when I used to live in Brooklyn, he used to always stand outside and smoke. As soon as he used to see me, he used to put it away. Why? I have a beard, he thought I was a rabbi, right? He always used to put it away. So somebody like that, even though he breaks Shabbat in front of people, but if he sees the rabbi hide it, he's embarrassed, he's not considered mechalel Shabbat, even though it's mechalel Shabbat. But if he hides it, he's not considered mechalel Shabbat. Once a person comes to a level, he doesn't care about anybody, even in front of the rabbi, or breaks Shabbat, oh, you're a rabbi, you know Shabbat from smoking, that's considered mechalel Shabbat. The person's not embarrassed to take his car and drive around by the shul where everybody's seeing him, right? That's considered mechalel Shabbat. So you have a problem. How are you going to cook for such a person? If you're inviting such a person to your house for Yom Tov, you have to make sure that you cook all your food before Yom Tov, and you can only warm it up on Yom Tov when he comes to your house. You're not allowed to cook specifically for them on Yom Tov. It's asur. If you have a din of a goy, and therefore it would be asur to cook for them. So to avoid it, you have to make sure that you cook all the food before Yom Tov. If you know these type of people, not saying not to invite them. You should invite them. You should make carve them, tell them the Torah, bring them to your house. But you have to do it beheter. You can feel asur to cook for people in Mechalel Shabbat for Hesya, and therefore, if you know, you should prepare all the food from before Yom Tov. רבי חנניה בן הגשם מלצה הקדוש ברוך הוא כל ישראל לפיכך ארבע רם תורה מצוות שמר לבן חפץ למען צדקו יגדיל תורה וידיר.
גדל והתקדש מרבה, על מה דיברה